Let me ask you something before this story begins. Have you ever stayed quiet? Not because you were weak, but because speaking would destroy the one you loved? If you believe silence can be stronger than anger, type silence in the comments. She had always been the kind of woman who moved softly through rooms, not because she was afraid, but because she believed love should never be loud. She folded laundry the same way every time. She rinsed dishes until they shined. She listened more than she spoke. And now, she was 7 months pregnant. Her hands often rested on her belly, not to protect it, but to remind herself that something good still lived there. The baby kicked when she was sad, almost like it knew. Her husband used to notice things like that. Used to. He wasn't cruel by nature. That's important to understand. He was admired, respected, successful, the kind of man people lean toward when he spoke. But success has a way of changing how a man listens. Little by little, he stopped asking questions. Little by little, he assumed he already knew the answers. And somewhere along the way, he forgot that love needs attention, not authority. The party was meant to celebrate him. A promotion, a milestone, a room full of people who clapped at the right moments. She didn't want to go. Her feet were swollen. Her back hurt, and lately, crowded rooms made her feel invisible. But she went anyway, because love, to her, meant showing up even when it hurt. She stood near the table, holding a glass of water. Someone joked about cravings. Another joked about mood swings. She smiled politely. Then her husband laughed. Not with her. At her. He said something careless. Something meant to impress others. Something small enough that no one else noticed. But it landed like a crack in glass. The room laughed. She didn't. If you've ever smiled while your heart broke, type "I know" in the comments. Then came the sentence, the one he would replay for the rest of his life. He raised his voice, just a little. Relax. She's been dramatic since the pregnancy started. Silence followed, not the awkward kind, the dangerous kind. She felt the baby kick hard, and for the first time, she didn't touch her belly to comfort herself. She touched it to apologize. She could have spoken. She could have corrected him, but she remembered the man he used to be, the one who held her hand in grocery lines, the one who whispered promises no one else heard. So she stayed quiet, because sometimes silence is not surrender. Sometimes it's love on its knees. He noticed her eyes, not angry, not crying, just empty, and something about that unsettled him. That night, she didn't argue. She didn't bring it up. She didn't cry. She simply turned away in bed. And that scared him more than any fight ever could. 3 days later, he would open a folder he was never meant to see. And inside it, he would discover the truth about the woman he thought he knew. A truth so quiet, so devastating, that it would make that party seem merciful. Before we go on, answer this honestly. Have you ever realized too late that the person you underestimated was the one holding everything together? If that question makes your chest feel tight, type "too late" in the comments. The folder wasn't hidden. That's what unsettled him most. It sat on the desk, thin and plain. No lock, no warning, just a single word written on it. Before, he opened it thinking it was paperwork. Instead, he found letters, handwritten, neat, careful, written by her, but not to him. The letters were dated years back, before marriage, before the house, before the life everyone admired. They weren't love letters. They were goodbye letters. One line stopped him cold. If I leave now, maybe he will never know how much I gave up. He read that line again. And again, his stomach tightened. Gave up what? As he read, a picture formed. A woman younger, stronger than he ever imagined. She had worked 2 jobs, cared for someone sick, turned down opportunities she never mentioned. One letter described a phone call she never returned. Another described a job offer she never accepted. Because she chose him. Not because she had to, but because she believed in quiet loyalty. He had mistaken her silence for simplicity. That was his first mistake. That night, he watched her sleep. Her breathing was shallow. One hand rested on her belly. The baby moved, and something broke in him. He realized something terrifying. She had been protecting more than a child. She had been protecting him from guilt, from pressure, from knowing how much she lost. The next morning, he finally spoke, not with authority, with uncertainty. Why didn't you ever tell me? She didn't answer right away. She stirred her tea slowly. Then she said, because love isn't a transaction. That sentence stayed with him. It should have ended there, but it didn't. That afternoon, her phone rang. She didn't answer, but he saw the name. Not saved, just numbers. Then a message. They know. Call me. Her face changed. Not fear. Resolve. He asked who it was. She said, someone from before. That night, she finally spoke. Not emotionally. Carefully. Years ago, she had been responsible for something big. Something involving money. Not illegal, but powerful. She had walked away to keep someone else safe. And now, that past had found her. He wanted details. She shook her head. Knowing too much puts you in danger. Danger. That word didn't belong in their life. And yet, it was here. Later, he helped her into bed, adjusted the pillows, pulled the blanket higher. No dramatic music, no grand speech, just hands learning each other again. She whispered, you don't have to stay. He answered without thinking, I'm not leaving. For the first time in months, she believed him. 2 days later, a stranger waited near the house. Not threatening, not obvious, just watching. The kind of watching that counts steps and exits. That night, she packed a small bag. He asked why. She said, in case I have to disappear again. That word hit him harder than any insult. Disappear. Like she had never existed. That same night, a single envelope slid under their door. Inside was a photo. Her, from years ago, with one sentence written beneath it. You chose love. Now choose fast. He looked at her. She looked back. And, for the first time, the man who once shamed his wife understood something terrifying. Loving her meant risking everything. Before we go further, pause for 1 second. If you believe real love isn't proven by words, but by who stays when it gets dangerous, type I stay in the comments. They didn't sleep. Not really. The house made sounds it never made before. Every floorboard felt louder. Every passing car felt closer. She sat on the edge of the bed, folding and unfolding the same shirt. He watched her hands. They weren't shaking. That scared him more than fear would have. At sunrise she spoke, not dramatically, not emotionally, like someone finally laying down a heavy bag. Years ago, she had worked with people who moved money quietly, not criminals, influencers, decision makers, fixers. She had been good at it, too good. When she discovered how that power could hurt innocent people, she walked away. She signed papers, gave up everything she'd earned, agreed to disappear, including from the version of herself she once was. He asked the question that hurt to ask, why didn't you tell me when we met? She answered softly, because I wanted to be loved for who I was not what I survived. The baby kicked. Hard. She flinched. He reached out without thinking. His hand rested on her belly, and for the first time, the baby kicked again, right under his palm. A strange thought crossed his mind. This child already trusted him more than he deserved. His voice broke. Do you know what it feels like to realize you hurt someone who was protecting you? She looked at him then. Really looked. I stayed silent because I thought losing your respect would hurt you less than losing your peace. That was when he understood. Her silence at the party hadn't been weakness. It had been love choosing pain instead of pride. And he had failed it. That afternoon, someone knocked, not aggressively, politely. A man about his age. Calm eyes. Neutral tone. I just want to talk. She went pale. He stepped forward without thinking. There's nothing to talk about. The man smiled slightly. There always is when the past shows up. The visitor didn't threaten. He didn't raise his voice. He simply laid out facts. People were asking questions again. Names were surfacing. And her silence was no longer enough. She needs to come with me, the man said, for her safety. He looked at his wife. She nodded slowly. Not agreement, acceptance. That's when he said the words that changed everything. She's not going anywhere without me. The man studied him, then said quietly, love makes people brave, but it also makes them targets. That night, the power went out, just for their house, just long enough. They sat in darkness, holding hands, listening to their own breathing, and for the first time, she whispered, I'm scared. The next morning, he made calls, not to lawyers, not to friends, to people he had avoided, people who owed him favors. He stepped into a world he never wanted to touch. Because love had pulled him there. By nightfall, he had made a choice. One that would end his career as he knew it. One that would protect his family. He didn't tell her. Not yet. Another event. Another room full of people. But this time, when someone joked, he didn't laugh. He stood beside her, hand on her back. Silent. Unmovable. People noticed. Respect returned, not because of status, because of presence. She leaned toward him and whispered, you don't have to prove anything. He whispered back, I know. That night, the visitor returned. No smile this time. You've complicated things. He replied calmly, then we're even. The man handed over a final envelope. Inside was a document, a release. Her past erased, at a cost that would surface soon. She read the document, then looked up slowly. What did you give up? He didn't answer. He just pulled her close. For the first time, she cried, not from fear, from relief. Weeks later, she went into labor early. The hospital lights were too bright, the room too quiet. As doctors moved quickly, his phone buzzed. One message. The cost has come due. He looked at his wife, at the child about to enter the world, and realized something chilling. The danger wasn't over. It had only changed shape. Before this story ends, ask yourself one thing. If love cost you everything you built, but saved everything that mattered, would you still choose it? If your answer is yes, type always in the comments. The hospital room smelled clean and sharp. Machines beeped softly. She squeezed his hand as another wave of pain passed. He stayed still, strong, but inside he was unraveling. Every second felt borrowed. Every breath felt like a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Then the doctor said the words that changed the air. She's strong, but the baby needs time. Time was the one thing they didn't feel they had. His phone buzzed again. Another message. Step away now. Walk away clean. Or lose everything you think you still own. He turned the phone face down. She noticed. Is it work? He nodded. A lie. But not a betrayal. He leaned down and whispered, no matter what happens next, you and this child are my life. She searched his face, and for the first time since the party, she saw no arrogance there, only devotion. There was no screaming, no chaos, just effort, breath, endurance, and then a sound, small, new, fragile. The baby cried. He laughed without realizing it. Then he cried too. The nurse placed the baby in her arms. She looked down and whispered, "Hello, love." That was it. That was the moment. Everything else faded. 2 days later, he didn't go home. He went to an office he had avoided his entire life. No cameras, no announcements, just signatures, resignations, transfers. He walked out lighter, poorer on paper, richer in ways no one could measure. When he returned to the hospital, she noticed immediately. "You look different," she said. He smiled softly. "I am." That night, when the baby slept, he told her everything. What he gave up, what he lost, what doors would never open again. She listened, then she took his hand. "You didn't lose anything," she said. "You came back to yourself." That was when he broke. Not loudly, quietly, the way men do when they finally feel safe. Life didn't turn magical. Bills still came. Days were still long. The baby cried at night. But something was different. He listened now. Really listened. He noticed how she rested her hand on the crib. How she paused before speaking. How silence was her language of love. And this time, he learned to speak it too. Months later, another gathering. Smaller. Quieter. Someone made a joke. About pregnancy. About women. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shame anyone. He simply said, "That woman saved my life." The room went silent. She looked at him, eyes shining. He squeezed her hand. No performance, just truth. Years later, their child would ask, "Why do you always stand next to Mom?" He answered without hesitation, "Because once I didn't, and I almost lost everything." That night, as they lay in bed, she whispered, "You know, I almost left that night." He closed his eyes. "I know." She continued, "But you stayed." He turned to her. "No," he said softly. "You stayed first." The end. If this story touched something in you, don't scroll away yet. Love doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes it just needs to be seen. Like and subscribe for more heartwarming stories like this.